This is the easiest houseplant to take care of, and I'm going to tell you why. So this is the heartleaf philodendron, and when it comes to plants that are easy to take care of, this is the one that you want. There are a couple of components that I think of when I think of plants that are easy to take care of. There's humidity, there's light, there's water and fertilization requirements, and finally there's soil. So let's go one by one and talk about why this plant reigns supreme when it comes to plants that are easy to take care of. So I'm sure you've seen it. You've gone on YouTube and you've typed in some type of houseplant video, and you see some of these people who have these beautiful cabinets full of exotic houseplants that you wonder how in the world do they possibly maintain and take care of them. And in this amazing setup, you'll also notice that people who have the most exotic of exotics typically have a humidifier. A humidifier is an essential component when it comes to taking care of tropical houseplants because a lot of these houseplants that are native to tropical regions are in regions that have relatively high humidity. And a high humidity is really something that folks find difficult to replicate when indoors, be it in the summertime when you have the AC on and it's drying out the moisture in your air, or even in the wintertime when you have the heat on and even though you turn on the heat, you really find it difficult to hold moisture in the air. When it comes to the heartleaf philodendron, it really makes no difference to it. Sure, it will most likely thrive in higher relative humidity levels, but at the same time, if you were to keep this plant indoors like I do, it really has no problem thriving. Notice how these leaves are really showing no signs of humidity distress. So I see no wilting, I see no browning of the edges, I see no crispiness. This heartleaf philodendron really couldn't care less what the relative humidity is. If it's comfortable to you in your home with whatever temperature you have in your home, it's also going to be comfortable to this heartleaf philodendron, trust me. Now let's talk about the lighting. I think lighting is truly one of the things that separates this particular heartleaf philodendron from the rest. When you look at its relatives, such as the Philodendron Brazil or the lemon lime philodendron, those have specific lighting requirements that are needed in order to either produce that variegated pattern in the case of the Philodendron Brazil, or in order to make sure that you don't damage the delicate foliage of the lemon lime philodendron. With this heartleaf philodendron, with its basically basic dark green leaves, it doesn't necessarily have that requirement of either having the super bright light or the medium light. In fact, it can survive in low light conditions, it can survive in medium light conditions, and it can also survive in the bright conditions. The key really is to make sure that it's properly acclimated. Now, obviously, just like with any tropical house plants and with other things that I say, when it comes to lighting, sure, your plant might survive in those low light conditions, but it won't necessarily thrive. With this heartleaf philodendron, it still holds true. In low light conditions, it's not going to thrive. It's not going to put on a foot or 2 feet of growth every year, but it will survive. Now, if you want it to thrive, obviously you put it in these high light conditions and you might potentially give it a moss pole to have something to hold on to so the leaves will get bigger, or you can just simply let it trail, which is what I'm doing here. Regardless, when it comes to light, it can really tolerate a wide range of lighting conditions, which I think is pretty important when it comes to taking care of what I call the easiest houseplant to take care of. If you like videos like this and want to see more videos about houseplant tips and tricks, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. It's totally free and would mean a lot. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Then there's obviously the watering. So I have this in a terracotta pot, and because I have it in a terracotta pot, terracotta is breathable, so the soil tends to dry out more quickly than other pots that I might have, such as a plastic pot that's in a decorative pot. But when we look at this particular philodendron and when we talk about the watering needs, it really is a plant that does not need to be cared for. It really is a plant that doesn't need to be babysat. And by that, I mean, you don't really need to worry about the watering here. Give it some neglect, it will be fine, it will still grow. Even in this terracotta pot, I haven't watered this plant in about 2 weeks. It's probably due for watering now just based on how dry the soil is, but it's still loving life. Now, when it also comes to watering, one of the things that I like about the heartleaf philodendron, and really most philodendrons, is that it does give you signs of when it is thirsty. So you can see how rigid the leaves are now, in the sense that they're not really curled up or they're not really curled down. They're just nice and flat. So this tells me that this heartleaf philodendron is pretty much good to go. Now, if I were to let this dry out for probably about another 2 weeks, you will notice some droopiness of the leaves, or you might notice some curling of the leaves. So when it comes to taking care of this and trying to figure out when to water or why to water or when not to water, heartleaf philodendron really is the way to go if you're someone who doesn't necessarily have a strict watering schedule, which I recommend. Don't have a strict watering schedule. But if you're someone who might be forgetful when it comes to watering your plant, give this one a try. I promise you it is very hard to kill, even if you choose or don't choose to water it for 3 weeks at a time, and depending on the pot, 4 weeks at a time. So heartleaf philodendron is definitely good when it comes to watering as well. Soil is one of those things that is fairly basic when it comes to potting a plant. Now, you have varying degrees of soil. So you can have a soil mixture that retains a lot of moisture. And this is really good for those type of plants that really need to stay consistently moist. Then on the other side of the spectrum, you have those type of soils that are just simply free flowing. So when you water, the water just goes out almost immediately. Then you have somewhere in between where your soil just has that right amount of water retention, where when you water it, the water doesn't flow through immediately. It takes several seconds for it to flow through, but you do know that your plants have that moisture that it needs in order to drink. When it comes to the heartleaf philodendron, it can survive in a wide degree of soils. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend putting it in a potting soil that retains so much moisture to where it is consistently moist, because with a lot of plants that can lead to root rot, and when you have root rot, it leads to a whole bunch of issues with any of your plants. I also would not recommend that you put it in a medium that has free flowing soil. And the reason is because this isn't a succulent. So it does need to have a medium where the soil stays damp long enough for the roots to soak up the nutrients that it needs. And on that topic of watering also comes the fertilization. With fertilization, you can really choose to fertilize or choose not to fertilize. The reason why you would choose to fertilize is if you are just trying to encourage that vigorous growth, as well as if you're attempting to develop larger leaves. On the other hand, if you choose not to fertilize, that's fine too. Your leaves will pretty much stay in the small to medium range. And if you're trailing your plant, it also isn't going to be really necessary anyway, because your leaves are pretty much going to be stunted because they have nothing to hold on to. So fertilize, don't fertilize, really up to you. But I think fertilization is really one of those things that makes a house plant easy, in the sense that if I have a plant that I don't need to fertilize, well, you know what? That's a super easy house plant to take care of. So heartleaf philodendron, if you're someone who doesn't want to run to a big box store to purchase fertilizer, that's what you should go with, heartleaf philodendron. So there you have it. Those are really my reasons why I believe that the heartleaf philodendron is the easiest houseplant to take care of. Let me know down in the comment sections if you agree. What are some houseplants that you find easy to take care of, and what are some houseplants that you actually find difficult to take care of? I would love to hear them. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And with that, I'll see you on the next video.